Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Pink Spots. So, as highly advertised in the Pink Spotlight today, we have the one, the only, Christopher Sebastian. Henceforth, will be referred to as Sebastian. Sebastian's a well-known vegan, well-known in the vegan world as an author, researcher, and lecturer. He uses a multidisciplinary approach that includes media theory, political science, and social psychology to examine how human relationships with other animals shape our attitudes about race, sexuality, and class. He also rocks knee-high socks like no one you've ever seen, so you got to appreciate the brains and the beauty. So, hey, Sebastian, thanks for being here today. How has 2021 been for you so far?
Thank you so much for having me. And 2021 has been an interesting couple of weeks so far. We've watched so much history unfolding in the past couple of weeks. So personally, I'm okay. But on a macro level, I also am just I have so many emotions about what to think for the future. Hopefully the rest of 2021 turned out a lot better than the beginning of it.
Yes. Yeah, it started off with a bang, that's for sure. So, this is a very exciting collaboration for me because your work has definitely, the more academic side of what you do has obviously shaped how I speak about animal liberation, how I speak about the intersections of human and animal oppression. But I think in certain ways, you've actually had a much bigger impact on me with the work you've done around how you talk about activism, these spaces that we're in, the concepts we use to enact our activism, more of this almost social side of what we're trying to do here. I found a lot of your work to be really validating and really illuminating. And so that's sort of more of what I want to focus on with you today. I'm so excited to talk to you. So to start us off high level, tell us what your general approach to activism is. How do you like to connect with people? I know I just listened to your interview on the Vegan Vanguard, which was awesome, and everyone should go check it out if you haven't already. And you talked about, I thought it was really interesting that you talked about taking kind of an origin approach to how you talk to people who may be saying something ignorant or may have a different viewpoint from you, as a way to kind of depersonalize conflict. So I'd love to have you kind of explain that more and expand on it here.
Yeah, I think that overall we have a tendency in activist circles to have these hot takes, especially in this very direct social media culture that we're living in, where okay, something happens and then you immediately react to it. And taking a reactionary approach, I think, is sometimes, pretty often actually, not the most productive thing to do. And actually kind of sitting in your discomfort with something that has recently occurred is probably a lot more productive than taking an immediate jump into the fray to to sort of dissect a situation where we may not even have all the information yet. Also, there is a lot of, particularly in animal activism, there is a lot of hot take culture around making flat one-dimensional comparisons between marginalized groups, which is not always the most productive thing to do. And we've seen that reflected or blow up over and over again. It seems like every couple of years we're having the same discussions. And that's that's awesome. He says facetiously, but yeah, so rather than having these sort of knee-jerk reactions, I think it is better, at least for me, it's been demonstrated to be better to actually step back and see where we can actually connect with another person based on where did this originate? Where what were the what are the historical actions that precipitated this moment that we're living in, where we can find commonality. And I I say this over and over again, but didn't just invent this. I didn't make this up. This isn't me. This is just after after years of actually reading history and social theory from people that are way smarter than me. I'm well, this is kind of a thing that works, and and it's been truly effective for me in the long term as a result. So that is why I recommend it to other people. Let's look at what what the origin of this situation is and where we can find commonality, rather than you're bad because of this thing, or here is a here is a hyper insensitive or inflammatory situation that I'm going to juxtapose next to another situation, and these two things are exactly the same. And it's wow, that's all the nuance has been picked up, tucked out the window. And and now
right.
you just have a bunch of angry people on both sides, both of whom actually are right. And that's the saddest thing about it. If people actually step back and and didn't rely on these incendiary and inflammatory things, we would probably find that our commonality is much higher than we tend to think about it.
Yeah, I've definitely found that in my activism, and especially in, I've always talked about how powerful I think our just day-to-day existence can be in terms of activism and affecting change. Not necessarily in that potentially ableist way of you're a billboard for veganism, or you're a billboard for, you have to live this joyful, healthy, happy life. But I mean more in the sense of being grounded in your principles, being content and well educated in what you believe, and being comfortable with the fact that, not comfortable in the sense that you're okay with it, but just comfortable in the sense that you understand that there's a lot of people who may not have that same education as you, who may not have come to the same conclusions as you yet, and yet you're still here in this world trying to navigate it and make connections with people. And I just love you talking about origin, because I found, like I had a friend who is Korean American, and he just started talking one day about how he looks at other Asian people sometimes and feels embarrassed because they're being too Asian. And that opened this like amazing door to have this conversation about like white as the default and where that comes from. And he was so receptive to it, and it's like these spaces, I just feel every day there's always some little space where you can just like connect with someone else on something that they're expressing is a concern to them or a lived experience of theirs, and find a way to kind of make that connection. That doesn't include, I just think in vegan spaces, there's such like black and white thinking, and there is such a vilification of people who eat animals that it's like, even if you do manage to convert someone through those tactics, then they're going to become that kind of activist too, right? Where they're just out attacking everybody. And then I think that's when you fall into a lot of harmful traps of crossing the line and using examples in a really traumatizing kind of way. And I think for me, I've never really understood why we're trying to get people over to our side in any ideology through trauma.
That's it. Creating more trauma. It's like,
yeah, like why?
That's not helpful. That's literally like, yeah, like I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain that to people any more clearly. And like, this isn't like, like I guess I understand your reasons. I actually saw, and I regret that I don't remember who shared this, but someone had written like a social media post about this. Like, why do you think this is going to be the most effective thing? Like, what is it about about this that drives you? And the answer was a lot of our activism is punitive. It is like it's rooted in retributive justice, like retribution, because people need to be punished for the enslavement and exploitation of other animals. And so it is in many ways gratifying or validating to elicit these responses out of people, but it is not necessarily effective. In fact, it very rarely is effective if you actually look at the data behind it. This isn't this isn't the best thing to do. So
yeah, and it's always stunning to me how people don't seem to, especially people who are not open to learning the connections between different types of oppression, how much that type of behavior is replicating a type of supremacy or a type of exceptionalism, right? So it's like, okay, you might get someone to go vegan, but you're doing it in this way that is very replicating of a colonizing sort of behavior or a white supremacist sort of behavior. Because often, those are the vegans who go out and attack other people. It may be people of color, maybe disabled people, whoever it is, for not being vegan. And it's like, I just used to have this argument all the time, people wanting to get the bro types, convert them to veganism. And I'm like, but at what cost, right? At what cost? Because now the rest of us feel less safe, and is that really the mode that we're trying to go down? Anyway. I'm glad you brought up the I cannot say that word, retribution-based justice. We'll go with that. When I wanted to talk to you about that because I've struggled lately so I realized I'm autistic last year, and it explained so much to me about the experiences I've had in activist spaces and being so anxious and confused all the time as to what the rules are and being afraid of, doing something wrong. So I have over the last few years tried to critique that, but I've learned that, talking about cancel culture is not an effective way to do that, because canceling is a tool that was created by Black women to try to take some power back from power structures. So I was just wondering if you had any general ideas about how we can really critique, because I know we both have experienced this sort of this sort of form of what's the word I'm looking for? Because I want to say canceling, but I don't want to say that. But this form of like almost like a
This
posse.
toxic engagement, yeah, like
Yes, thank you.
mob style, like the
Yeah. And I'm like,
I
how do we talk about this in a way where we can effectively critique it and make more people feel safe to engage with that critique without maybe being harmful or using the wrong phrases to talk about what we're trying to actually get at.
yeah, once I figure that out, I am going to write a book about it, and then I'll sell that book.
And I will be the
For
first in line to buy it.
Because we all know that I love the grift, but yeah, like this is like that's not something that that I think is very easy to answer. Like how like for myself, for myself, like I've been canceled like 1,500 times, and so and every time it happens, I'm like, okay, like here we are again. Like I have decided that like the best thing for me to do, and for like for my own mental health, is to like just keep on keeping on. Like like it's like, oh, like you said this thing, or you like did this, or you wore blue shoes, and now you're canceled, and I'm like, well, like, I've been canceled again, and like, and this will definitely not be the last time. So I'll just add this to the list, and like, and just continue living like my most authentic truth for me. Like, and this isn't like, this is gonna be like, it's gonna be different for different situations too. Like sometimes people get canceled, and I'm like, yeah, like I was a pretty cancelable offense. And like, like and that line is going to be different for everybody, because it's not like it's a moving target. Like it's impossible, because no two people are the same, and no two people's actions to like certain words and situations are going to be the same. Like in my own personal experiences, like one oh, like, can I talk about the times that I've been canceled? Like, because we like.
I mean, I would love to hear it, but that's your call to make. I will also talk about times I've been canceled if it helps. We can be canceled together for talking about being canceled.
Share our sins. Yeah, no, for real.
Yes.
I remember one of the earliest times. So embarrassing. I remember one of the earliest times that I had been canceled, and it's because I thought that I put up all the disclaimers that like would keep me safe, and I failed at that, obviously. But I had put up some recipes. You can probably still look through my social media and find it. But like I have a bunch of recipes, because I struggle with my weight. Like I like there are so many reasons, but this is a really good and important story. But like for myself, to help control my weight, one of the things that is very helpful for me is to is to watch like carbohydrate dense foods. A lot of foods are like vegan foods or plant-based foods are going to be carb heavy. And so finding like a variety of recipes that that are not carb heavy, that curb like sugar cravings and things like that, like those that's hard to come by. They can be pretty repetitive because it's like the same 5 or 6 things. And so like I had said to other people, like, listen, if you're in a similar boat to me, and like you want to eat, this was before like keto became like super famous and everything, but like if you're in a similar boat to me, and like and you like need to drop a couple of pounds, this is an easy way to do it if you are like sensitive to carbs. And and like a lot of people thought that these recipes were super helpful, but then there was like very small but vocal minority of people who said, no, this is evil because you're promoting diet culture. And I'm like, this is like, I was very specific. Like, if this doesn't apply to you, or like, or if this is like in any way like insulting to you, or if this is very difficult to you, like, like this is not for you. This isn't the post for you. Like, keep it moving, and it's fine. We don't you don't have to participate in this discussion. But like, the existence of this post and the existence of these recipes alone was enough for like this minority of people to feel very, very aggrieved. And like, and they continue to tell me how like any type of like, and this is the thing, the sort of black and white thinking that that people have, irrespective of your your social or political views. It's the idea of black and white thinking that I think is so dangerous. It's any discussion at all about losing weight for any reason is wrong, bad, and evil. I happen to have very specific medical reasons why I need to maintain a certain weight. One of them being that I have osteomyositis, synovial chondromatosis, which is a very fancy way of saying that that I've got really effed up joints, specifically in my knees. And I didn't know this until about 7 years ago, and I went to an osteopathic surgeon who had performed 2 surgeries on me and helped me to run again, which is something that I hadn't done in years. And one of the things that actually contributes to this condition is subtle variations on my weight, more than 15 pounds. So that's going to aggravate my condition. And so that's that's a legit medical reason why I want to maintain my weight. And when when I'm okay, this is I'm starting to actually feel physical pain. I'm going into the danger zone. My knees can't handle this. This is something that I can do, that I can control, because this is a condition that's going to deteriorate as I get older. That is just a functional, easy way for me to prevent or delay worsening of this condition. Should I have to disclose my medical condition in order to in order to feel comfortable with losing weight? How do I balance that against sharing this information with other people who may be living with a different condition or even the same condition and not even know? I also have ulcerative colitis. There are certain plant-based foods can absolutely tear my stomach up. I've learned to control my colitis by controlling the amount of dietary fiber that I consume. And but I also recognize that fiber is one of the things that keeps me that keeps me feeling healthy and looking good. And so I'm these are these are oppositional things, but diet plays a role in all of these things. And and so now it's either am I ever allowed to talk about that? Because for for the time being that has actually gotten so bad that the people involved it worried me so bad that then my mental health started to to go to the toilet. And so I'm now I'm dealing with physical conditions, and I'm dealing with emotional and mental trauma as well, because people disagree with me on the internet, and I'm am I going to let the internet do this to me? And I'm you know what, we're just going to close this discussion, close the post, close the photos, no more recipes, we're never going to do this again. And and I'm that was unfortunate for me. Another time, and maybe some of your listeners would be familiar with this, when I have been canceled. And I do I look back fondly at my cancellations, because I'm you know what, I let it stress me out in the moment, and I really shouldn't have. Was when this was in, again, on social media, because this is where a lot of these discussions take place. There was a bunch of people who wanted to, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but there were a bunch of people, again, a small minority of people, who had targeted a disabled activist for for writing a post on their own social media channels and their own website about about disability, and and about simply about canceling people and not knowing their ability in certain settings. Because this person was white, one of the things that was weaponized against them was was race. You know what, I am automatically right because I'm a Black person, and so my and this is again, this is probably going to provoke a cancellation. Really, at this point, I don't care. I'm Black, and so therefore, you know what, this is a thing that is racist, and and because I am Black, not because I am right, and not because I've actually researched this information, you're wrong. And you're also racist, and you're bad, and you must be canceled. Almost verbatim those words. And and this was after watching these same individuals involved go through and literally systematically do this to several people. And so I'm recognizing this pattern of like behavior that reflects malignant narcissism in many ways, and like and not driven by a desire to help people to be better, but to banish people from communities. And like and this for me was kind of a straw, because that person involved was actually a personal friend of mine, and I'm like, I can't in good conscience sit by anymore and allow this to happen. So I'm going to speak up, and I'm going to use like actual research and theory from Black women to explain why I disagree. Not that you're wrong, not that you're bad, but why I disagree with your take on this situation. Because the conversation is actually a much larger conversation about like how digital media like influences us, and how how digital media is actually used, and like what levels of access people have to understanding how the digital media is is created, consumed, and distributed to like many different populations of people. And like and yeah, like I don't expect everybody, like one of my favorite phrases is like, oh well, like you can educate yourself and you can Google it. And I always have said to people, this is a dangerous thing to say, because like people are influenced to some degree by their previous searches and by the filter bubbles that they aggregate themselves into. If you tell someone who you suspect of being racist to educate yourself, Google is like an evil genie. If you if you type something into a search bar, chances are you're going to get exactly what you're looking for. And like and that can be good or bad. Most often bad. And so, like, if you send someone else off to like educate themselves about anti-racism, your chances of them coming back as a sentient MAGA hat are just as high as them coming back being like Kimberly Crenshaw's greatest scholar. And you just don't know which way that's going to go. And so, does that make you responsible for educating them? F no. Like, obviously not. But at the same time, like, what? We just throw these generalized statements out there as if it's okay, not understanding how like the people who own and dominate these digital media spaces actually manipulate the data in their favor, and they make it much more likely that people are going to come across information that reinforces their existing biases, rather than like coming back with genuine, authentic information about anti-racism. And this is coming from a Black woman. Like, I had cited scholars like Sophia Noble, who had written Algorithms of Oppression, among others. And so, like, and so with me coming with this, like, with this information, literally citing books, literally sharing papers, and like attempting to educate, oh no, you canceled too. So like now, like, now we found another, like everybody did this over here. Like, he hates black women and marginalized women. And I'm like, actually, like, I disagreed with you, and I used research from another Black woman. And so what we're seeing now is like, these divisions of identity don't actually work, because you're like, you're trying to like weaponize like race and gender, like, against someone who's actually using like research from women, from persons of your same background. And so like, who do you believe in this situation? Like, and the internet and social media has like amplified this in really unhealthy ways. And so like, and that, but what the like the plot twist of all of this is that like, me being very public and actually saying, I have to disagree with this, and here's why, actually revealed a pattern of like malignant narcissistic behavior of this person, like, that several other people have experienced. And so it's like, actually, like, what, I've been afraid to speak up too, and I've been afraid of like making mistakes or saying anything or even engaging online, because I know that this person is constantly watching and looking for an opportunity to like, to like stab me in the neck. And so like, that actually ended up being like a happy ending, but that doesn't happen all the time. Now, is this like a case study in which like, like people shouldn't experience consequences for saying horrible, bad, racist things and then cry victim when they do that? Like, absolutely not, because that's a different situation. But yeah, like, what, every situation has to be taken on an individual basis. And like, we have to, again, engage with people based on nuance and understanding where they're coming from and trying to find some commonality, rather than looking for a reason why we can make this person go away altogether. And that's like, that it just comes back to the original thing that we were talking about. So those are my stories of cancellation. Big fun, big fun.
I have so many thoughts, but I really, you had written a blog post about that kind of, I think centered around the idea of disclosure and, should I really have to disclose things that maybe I'm not comfortable disclosing in order to have a seat at the table of a conversation? And that always really resonated with me as well. And I think it kind of fits into what you're saying, is that when we get so far into, I don't even know what to call it, like oppression Olympics, what's the distorted, like identity politics, like I don't know what we're supposed to call it, but when we get so far into that, where like literally you have to have a certain identity before you can even speak on anything, it just can be really harmful. And I think I would always prefer someone to feel comfortable asking a question or being part of the conversation than to be so terrified to engage at all. And I think what you're getting at too is really important, is that it's extremely difficult to talk about these things, because I feel like once you start talking about it, everyone goes to like Nazi, right? Like every time you try to talk about cancel culture or identity or anything like that, people always go to like, well, we shouldn't have like racists, like white supremacists being able to say whatever they want. And it's like, I agree, I get that, but there's a whole world of other situations that we're encountering that are not that, and that we're not really doing our best to make people feel safe in these spaces. Like for myself, like I think you had brought it up in the context of like a feminist discussion that was going on, and people were telling you that because you're a man, you weren't allowed to like have any part of the conversation, but you had had experiences that were relevant to the conversation being had. And I know for myself, I was questioning my gender and my sexuality for a while. And through that journey, I started to realize that some of the narrative that we have around like a queer identity or a queer journey was actually really harmful and was keeping me from knowing that I was queer. It's like the stories of like everyone has the same experience of knowing that they're queer, they're gay, whatever. And I just had picked up on, there were a lot of spaces that seemed to be really gatekeeping. Like they didn't want people to know that they were queer, right? They didn't want people to be like, oh shit, that's me too. I felt so fragile and vulnerable in this questioning that I had, that I just was never comfortable disclosing that. So there are just so many conversations that I didn't participate in that I would have really liked to because of that. So I don't know if you have any tips, but it's something or any thoughts, but it's something I've been thinking about for a while, is like, how do we create spaces where we try to keep some guardrails on things like splaining and, fragility and like talking over people, but also make space for people to like be part of the conversation without needing to disclose things that are really personal to them. Because I also, like, I have medical conditions and I have certain issues, and I can relate to that. Like I've had to really try different diet regimens and different things to try to heal. And I've always felt really uncomfortable, like we're not allowed to talk about that stuff in public, at least not without having like my platform be about being disabled and disclosing my conditions and all of this. And it's like, there's a lot of people struggling. And if I have something that's helpful, I just want to be able to share it with people and not have to be labeled like, I'm ableist or I'm fat shaming or anything like that. And I just think it's just gotten really difficult for people to be able to engage with each other when they're in that sort of like questioning space, or when they don't want to disclose certain trauma that they've experienced.
Yeah, like once again, I wish I had answers here. Like right now, instead of answers, I actually end up with more questions, because people who are experiencing very similar things to you and I end up in my inbox. And one of the most popular things that I have from people who are messaging me for the first time is always, I didn't want to say this publicly, or like, you know what, I wanted to come to you because like I didn't feel like, you know, you were going to like give me that stabbing that we were talking about earlier. And like, so I just had to ask you about like X, Y, and Z, whatever the situation is. And like, I don't get to all of those messages because there are a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
My inbox doth overfloweth with those conversations. And like, you know, for a while I thought, well, maybe I can address this by making public posts, or like, you know, or writing essays, or like making carousel posts, or like, you know, some sort of infographics for social media where like everyone can benefit from this. But I already have a backlog of things that like, you know, I'm already writing about right now. And the way that my executive dysfunction is set up, like I ain't even getting to that.
Hey,
So, right. So I'm
I live that life.
like, right. And so here you are. I'm like I like it just like it creates more problems because like, you know, you can't help everyone that you want to help. You can't do as much work as you would like to do. Um, and like, you know, and like oftentimes I personally feel like I'm failing people,
Mm,
especially because like, you know, my immediate response to like, if you send me a message, I'm not going to answer for at least 5 days because like, you know, look, I actually have message as if right on cue, right across the top of my screen right now. Like I have notifications that are coming in. Like, you know, like we have this culture of immediacy once again, where like we kind
mm,
of think or hope that people are going to get right back to you. And because I know that like I can't do that, and I also know that if I read your message, like, you know, depending on what platform you send it to me across, you're going to see a timestamp showing that I did read it, and then that increases your
yep.
expectation, which increases my anxiety. And so we go through this like sort of like, you know, this sort of like arms race of like, you know, anxiety versus like expectation. And then I never do it. So like there are people who are waiting for me from like 5 months ago, and then they just eventually delete and block me because they think I'm being a diva, and they don't know. No, I'm actually mentally ill.
Hmm.
Like, so yeah, like it's just like it
I feel
compounds
that.
the problems we already have existing.
Yeah, it is. It can be a lot to carry to be a person who is, because I feel like so much of your work is really brave, and I know that's kind of a corny word to use, but I've just always really appreciated. There's been so many times where I've been really chewing on something and I feel like this isn't right. And I have these thoughts, but I'm like, oh, is this white fragility? Is this, is this something I need to dismantle? And then I'll read one of your posts and I'm like, oh, like this is a legitimate line of thought. This is very validating to me that this is something I'm picking up on that just isn't right. And it's not necessary. I mean, you always have to do the work to be like, am I being fragile? Am I being whatever? But it's like sometimes shit is just fucked up. Sometimes things are wrong. And especially being mentally ill, being disabled, being neurodivergent, like you do pick up on a lot of stuff that isn't okay in how we treat each other in these spaces. And then I think I appreciated your work too, because honestly, at the time, I felt like because I was white, I couldn't say anything. But I was like, oh, you just can't say anything.
This is
I was like,
another
no
like
matter
this
who
is
you just can't say anything.
no, this is actually like this is another like really fascinating thing. Because like you had used the phrase just now, like, you know, is this white fragility?
Mm-hmm.
And so like I find that we're at another like crossroads right now. Or at least maybe I'm just at a crossroads all by myself. Because like, you know, like looking like let's talk about white fragility for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I would love
like the
to.
phrase the phrase white fragility and like all of the like, you know, tangential phrases that have been like developed like as an offshoot of white fragility, like and the entire discourse around it, like male fragility or like, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
cis fragility, any of these other types of like fragile responses are all based around like, you know, the language and the nomenclature of Robin DiAngelo, who
Mm.
literally wrote the book
Yes.
on white fragility. And for a long time, we all looked at this, like for a few years now, like let's be real. And we said, oh, that's the framework behind which we should, like, you know, all get. and talk about how, like, what is actually responsible for these responses, and how people react to situations, and like, and the type, and to discuss the type of mechanisms that we employ in order to maintain normative whiteness, or like maleness, or whatever have you. And then last summer happened. Last summer being, like, this wave of racial consciousness that was motivated by, like, the anguish and grief that Black people have collectively been experiencing for generations, and kind of culminated around the murder of George Floyd. And so you see, like, a bunch of people across the country, across the world, who are actually expanding their, like, racial literacy for the first time. And so you see what books end up on the bestseller list, and White Fragility is always, like, on there. And for the first time, I started to see these critiques of White Fragility and Robin DiAngelo, and she's not so special. Why has she written a book about this? And I don't even think that White Fragility is a thing. And, like, and so, like, this white woman has created this scholarship around, like, and and, like, I've listened to podcasts, I've read the, like, critiques, and I'm like, wow, this is very, like, this is very provocative, this is very real, and, like, these are really well thought out responses and everything to it. But because there's always a big old hairy butt, like I said, nuance is everything. It's never black and white. But, like, we still actually use the phrase white fragility that came from this white woman and her white scholarship. And so, like, like, does this now mean that all of the fragility discourse, because we've collectively canceled Robin, or, like, I'm assuming, like, many of us, some of us, I don't know, like, have, like, decided that, like, what, Robin DiAngelo ain't shit. This white woman ain't shit. She came along, and she why is she a racial scholar? And she needs to sit down, and it's like, okay, like, I feel like you have a point, like, based on what you've said, and, like, and the rationale that you provided, like, I get a lot of what you're saying, but also we're still keeping the scholarship in the discussion.
I see what you're saying.
And so, like, once again, like, once again, like, if you are, like, so heavily invested in this black and white thinking, then, like, what, white fragility has to go out the window. But also you want to keep white fragility. Like, we're always supposed to, like, listen to black and brown people, but not all black and brown people disagree. I'm probably never gonna find common ground with Candace Owens and Omarosa. And, like, I'm not gonna find common ground with these people because they're black women. And so we don't, like, and so, like, is it always listen to the, like, we have to come to a place where we are able to, like, engage with thoughts and ideas based on their own merit and not their identity. And really, like, again, I will reemphasize this point. This isn't something new that I'm saying. Like, the very woman who coined the phrase, or helped coin the phrase identity politics, this is her work. Like, she said this herself. So, like, this is actually literature and scholarship that's been in existence literally for decades before I even came along and opened my mouth. And, like, and I think that a lot of us are not invested in actually going back and doing the work, TM, because if we did, we would probably be already having better conversations. But hot takes, we're in hot take city. Like, what, Robin DiAngelo, get her out of here. White fragility, all right, we'll keep it a little bit. Like, we're, like, what's, like, we have to, like, can we talk? Can we politic about this? Because I don't think that, like, I don't think that wholesale cancellation or wholesale embrace of ideas is what's up. Like, I think that a lot of what she wrote has value. It's actually given me language to talk about things that I didn't know about before. And, like, and so, like, I don't think that, like, did she profit from this? Did she write a book about this? Did she go on a bunch of talk shows about this? Yes, she did. Can we talk about, like, how she should be actually, like, using her platform more responsibly to, like, to reinforce the work of black and brown people who came before her that allowed her to create this? Yes, we should. And, like, and so, yeah, like, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. But I'm really glad that you brought up white fragility, because I'm like, yeah, like, fragility discourse is real. And, like, and I think that, like, I think that we should keep it. I don't think that, like, sorry to everybody out there who's listening to this podcast, like, live or in the future, like, because I know that I'm probably going to disappoint a whole bunch of people. But once again, this is where I'm at right now. This is my most authentic response based on the best information that I got available to me at this time. And if you got a different opinion, I might change that tomorrow. I might change that tomorrow because I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know, Sway. Like, like I don't like that's the thing. We have this almost expectation that people are like we have sprung forth from the brow of Zeus, knowing all of these things. And so people are coming to the conversation being like, what's a gender? And like,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't even know right now. But we can find
Right.
out together. If you're not coming in, with the 6 million wasn't enough, sweatshirt from the Capitol insurgency, last week, I think I can probably find a space to work with you. We all have our lines, but but for me, I'm like, listen, if somebody doesn't work with this person or these persons and have more thoughtful, productive conversations, it's going to go the other way very quickly. And and then you lose people and they either say, you know what, F this. I don't even care. I have a lot to do. I'm working for
Yeah.
$8 an hour and you know what? And I don't even have enough hours to to buy my food. F all of this. I
Yeah.
don't have time I don't have time or the money to go to college. I barely have time to actually engage in this conversation with you right now. Why do I need the extra headache and the emotional abuse of this person, giving me a neck schwa right here, cha-chow, because I didn't know the correct answer to the number of genders, and that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at right now. So
Yeah.
let me just drink my actual tea for the listeners later on. I'm literally drinking tea as we have this tea. So
I love it. Yeah, I love that rant, if we can call it that. We love a rant around here. And I kind of feel similarly about, I mean, I guess it's different, but kind of same vein of thought about phobic or phobia and just the overuse of it and how everything is everything you do is some kind of phobic thing. And I think about it especially around gender because I myself have had such a hard time figuring out what my gender is, what gender is, how to refer to myself. I do struggle with other people's pronouns and I do struggle with things like when someone transitions, my brain has a really hard time with not referring to them as the gender that they're not in the past. And, it's I just felt so bad and all of that's considered transphobic or whatever, but it's it just is how my brain works and is how a lot of people's brains work. So it's that is my job to do the best that I can do and to try to learn, right, and to try to keep going. But it's just been interesting becoming a person who is genderqueer and gets misgendered a lot and misgenders themselves a lot. That I just hate the rhetoric that it's so easy. It's so easy to do this or to do that. And it's well, it's not easy for a lot of people, but that doesn't mean that they're hateful. It just means that either their brains are having a hard time making the change, which is normal, or they're ignorant. Sometimes people are hateful, of course, but I just hate there's just so much rhetoric around anything you do is instantly you're a fucking monster and you should just have to go away forever. And it's I just love that you brought up gender because it's gender is so fucking complicated. Who isn't confused by gender? I have done a lot of reading and a lot of research on it, and I feel I haven't even scratched the surface. And we can't expect Joe Schmo in the grocery store or someone's Midwestern mom, random Midwestern mom to understand gender theory right out of the gate. But if they're trying, if they're giving it a shot and they're really trying, then that's good enough. So anyway.
One of my friends actually said something that has stuck with me and I've repeated over and over again. She's brilliant. She is a trans woman of color who is a lecturer at Columbia, and she said, and I repeat her words often, some people lead with their trauma instead of leading with their heart. That is that, and that's a problem. That's something that I had to that I had to internalize. And that I and that I have to tell myself daily like, because it applies to so many situations. Like, even like this, as one of the many people who has messaged me, there's a person I've never heard from before, like messaged me on Twitter, which, by the way, is the worst way to get in touch with me because I am so rarely on Twitter. But they were in my Twitter box and they were asking me, like, tell me about indigenous people and, like, and do you support indigenous, like, animal use? My initial response was, I'm not fucking dealing with this. Like, why is this person like coming at me with like, again, like this feels like a setup. This question feels like a setup because I've talked about this before. I've talked about this 100 times. Like and there's not going to be a right answer. Like if I say yes, like then it's like then one group of people is outraged. If I say no, like another group of like people are going to be outraged. And really, my answer is neither one of those because the true answer, once again, nuance, it's complicated. I don't know what indigenous means because a blanket term for all people who have not been colonized, I think is actually not correct. What indigenous people are you talking about, sir and or ma'am? And like what conversation do you want to have about what type of animal exploitation they're engaging in? Because if you're talking about if you're talking about Inuit people or Yupik people, like that's completely separate from talking about Native Americans. And even among Native Americans, there are several different tribes, none of which are exactly the same. And so, the idea that there is this blanket approval or disapproval of indigenous practices or indigenous people is, to me, flawed on its foundation because everybody is different, and just because someone is indigenous doesn't make them automatically a virtuous person. That's the trope of the noble savage, which again is racist itself. What did I have to do when I read that question? Close that inbox right back up and tell myself, I'm leading with my trauma right now because I've been traumatized so many times by people in the past who, were trying to engage with, not the best intentions. And I'm making assumptions about this person that are completely wrong, probably. And I had to remind myself of, yet another great thinker, Sherry Cole, who teaches at Cornell. And who wrote the book Mind If I Order the Cheeseburger, answered all the vegan questions in one book 10 years ago. She's brilliant. She's wonderful. And I was fortunate enough and privileged enough to actually attend a talk of hers. And during the Q&A, she actually said something that was so important. She said, always talk to people as though this is you answering the question for the very first time. Unless you have very good reason to believe that this person is being a piece of shit. And no matter how many times you have answered this question before, where do you get your protein? What about B12? What about the indigenous people? Always engage with people because you know what? It probably is the first time this person is asking that question. Yeah. Don't lead with your trauma. Lead with your heart. And that's hard to do. That's hard for me to do. I almost have to put it on a Post-it note and stick it on my bathroom mirror because it's that hard to do. And I'm not always successful. I'm not always successful. Man, F this person. What do you get out of my face? Don't answer that question. You know what? Go educate yourself because I wrote about this already 500 times. That's what I'm inclined to respond with. That's my trauma. That's my trauma. That's not that's not leadership. And I have to remember that. I have to remember that. And constantly remind myself because it is a road, it is a process, and it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the issue in general with these spaces, however we address it, however we refer to it, whatever we're supposed to do. I think it's, from what I've observed, it's a lot of people acting out of trauma at each other. A lot of this canceling is the problematic, whatever we're supposed to call it, is traumatized people traumatizing other people in order to feel a sense of safety and power and security, right? They're above, this isn't going to happen to me, I'm going to be the one doing it kind of mentality. And it's just really sad and also just really abusive, and I can have a lot of empathy for it, because I have a lot of trauma, and same thing, there are times when I'm you need to just close the window, move on, because you're not able to engage with this. not out of a place of trauma. I feel that way still, even when I get someone coming at me really hard for messing up. And it's like, you know, it goes back to the fragility conversation too. It's just like, it's not so much the fragility. I'm pretty good at like, I'm okay to hear you messed up or here's my take on something, but it's that sense that like, it's this primal like, oh fuck, you know, like I grew up in a house where if you messed up, you weren't loved. And it's like that kind of response comes back out. And it's like, so when I get something like that, I have to know that however this person's phrased it, that's going to be kind of the filter I'm looking at it through. And I need to like let it sit for a minute and wait till I know I'm okay and then go back and see if it's something I want to respond to or not. But it's hard. It's hard being in these spaces because I do feel like there is a lot of trauma response type actions happening at all times. And it gets to where I feel like all of us just feel that really high alert kind of way all the time. And that makes us all more inclined to respond out of trauma.
Yes. Like,
Yeah.
like what in the world? Like, I had to actually sit back and laugh at myself. I'm like, this person cares about indigenous people's fashion. You're about to like jump to a fucking inbox. What's wrong with you, trauma?
Trauma. It's always trauma.
I'm not well. I'm not well. But you know what? I've come to be okay with that. I've like, you know, I've embraced all the parts of me that are not okay, and like, and like, I feel like at this point I'm living my best life now. As flawed and as broken as it is, like, you know what? I feel safer and more comfortable in myself, and like, you know, and more secure in who I am. Because like, you know, I've taken the steps to increase like, you know, my boundaries and set and respect my own boundaries with other people. And like, you know, and I guess maybe that's the like the delicious pearl of wisdom that I should present, my delicious vegan pearl. Like, you know, that I can set out there, because God knows I don't have the answers. I don't feel like I do. But for me, like, this is what's worked. I'm like, you know what, understanding my own trauma, processing it, and not reproducing it on or against other people. That's the best thing that I can do. That, and like, you know, watch Instagram comics and like, you know, and kittens and watch people on TikTok be an absolute fool, because that's my other way of feeling.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine a better way to close the show than that. That was perfect. Thank you. So I just want to thank you so much for being here today. This was a dream come true for me. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Welcome back anytime. And I have links to all your stuff in the show notes and in the description box below, but I want to give you an opportunity to promote. You do so many different things. I want to give you an opportunity to promote and maybe focus people on where you want them to go, what you'd like them to engage with.
Oh boy, this is the Oscar speech, isn't it?
Yes.
Where do I want them to go? I'm on the advisory council for Encompass. You can find them online at encompassmovement.org, I believe. I'm messing it up. It is a relatively new organization run by Ariana Shberty, which centers racial diversity, equity, and inclusion within animal rights and animal-centered organizations. And like, she's doing amazing work. And she actually has like, you know, a program, a development program for like, you know, for racial equity leadership. So like there are so many opportunities for people to like learn about Encompass, like sign up for the newsletter, and like, you know, and take advantage of these often free, like, you know, things that that are available to you. I also love referring people to Food Empowerment Project. Lauren Ornelas is one of my favorite people. It would be irresponsible for me to not plug Lauren. Like, her work has been so enormously influential on me. If I like, you know, had someone who like I feel like is an absolute mentor in these spaces, I would definitely say like, you know, Lauren is one of the earliest people. And like, and these aren't necessarily people or organizations that everybody is always going to agree with. Like, you know what, like there were times when I would like read stuff that Lauren had written, and I'm like, or like watch talks that she had given, and I said, what is this, like, this madness? And then I come around and I'm like, she has always been right. Like, she's brilliant. Like, and, like, you know, and like, you know, and like, I think the Food Empowerment Project actually, like, you know, like, is one of the few organizations that does the work with like such sensitivity when it comes to, like, you know, centering like veganism, like, you know, and a plant-based diet, but like considering how like our food choices and, like, you know, food justice, which is an adjacent issue to veganism, but shouldn't be confused with veganism, like, you know, like impact the world around us, and how we can actually like take into consideration how the food that, like, you know, the plant-based food that we have in our system comes to our plates, because there's so much that I didn't know, and Lauren was instrumental in, like, you know, in crafting this organization and the scholarship around, like, you know, helping me to understand that. Like, of course, I'm always going to pimp Carol Adams because she is fantastic. And the sexual politics of meat is what actually led me down a path of interrogating, like, you know, the racial connections to like animal exploitation and animal domination. Like Brenda Sanders, who does the most amazing food justice work. She's an undercover powerhouse, because you'll never know what Brenda's working on. And if she actually, like, you know, if you were to work on an intro for Brenda for, like, you know, a program or event, you would have to be very selective, because you'll spend the entire hour just quoting her resume, because that's how humble she is about, like, you know, about the work that she does. Like, she doesn't make it known, but when you start like tearing apart the pieces and starting to look, and it's like, holy smokes, Brenda's had her hand in literally everything the entire time. Like, and books. Read books on theory, Marxist theory. Read books, like, you know, read books on economic theory. Read books on feminism, on Black feminism. Angela Yvonne Davis, like your bell hooks, your classic Karl Marx. Read David Nybert, who wrote Animal Oppression and Capitalism, another foundational book to my understanding of, like, you know, the ways that race interacts with species to create this sort of compound oppression. That's all that I can think of off the top of my head. There's so many people that I'm forgetting right now. So many amazing, like, you know, like scholars, activists, and, like, you know, and people who are doing incredible work. So, like, I'll just continue like pimping them on my social media, and, like, you know, and writing about them and citing them in my own work.
Beautiful. And you can follow Christopher Sebastian on social media with the links below. So that's our show. We did it. It's done. We achieved it. We're going to go hang out in the after party just for a little bit. So children, be warned, we're not hanging out for a long time today. But if you like what you saw or heard today, like, share, subscribe, leave me a review. Please check out Sebastian's links and his Patreon. He does really cool stuff over there, really cool events that he hosts. Next week on Wednesday, February 3rd, I'm going to do an advice column stream at 5 p.m. PT. So this is going to be a new thing I'm going to start doing monthly. So everyone look out for that. And if you have any burning questions you would like answered, because I'm going to start doing advice regularly, send them to pinkspots@gmail.com. Sorry, I have to do the admin at the end. So thank you, Sebastian. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming.
I'm just going through all of the comments from wonderful people.
I know, it's so fun to catch up after. So yeah, thanks everyone. We'll see you next week. And then everyone on the live stream, I'm going to play the outro, and then we'll have the little after party. All right. So as mentioned, I'm going to play this little video. It's going to be 3 minutes, so you can go get some more tea, do whatever you want to do, and then we'll be live again. All right.
Excellent. BRB.
Hey kids, made it just in time. All right. I went and grabbed my tea and it was like right in the nick of time. Oh, Latasha. How is everyone today? Like Latasha said, I'm gonna start saying what's wrong with you? Trauma, I'm not well. Yeah, it's always trauma. Just say, I'm operating out of a trauma response right now. I need you to leave me alone. Well, we didn't get to it, but I did want to ask your opinion on the word privilege.
Oh, you want to talk about privilege?
I mean, it's ironic because I read your thing where you're like, I'm not talking about privilege anymore. And I'm like, ooh, I want to talk to him about privilege.
Let's talk about why I'm not talking about privilege anymore.
Yeah.
Privilege is thrown around a lot. It is like the way that it is employed, it's not a useful term for me. Like you can actually add the essay to the show notes if you want to. I think that our discourse around privilege has run its course. I think that people use it far too frequently to shut conversations down rather than as a starting point for conversations. Instead of focusing on the systems that uphold privilege, I think that far too often we use privilege as a weapon to discount someone or to in some ways collect social capital.
Yeah.
The ways in which privilege has been used with me, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, there was I like this. I love my real world examples. I was having a conversation on my own social media, my Facebook, where I live in my own digital house. And I said, oh, congratulations to Stacey Abrams for this astonishing win in Georgia and nobody else, because I just want to step back for a moment and talk about how the Democratic Party, which in the words of Cornel West is full of these neoliberal gangsters, is is a complete mess. But what you can't do is take away the fact that Stacey Abrams is a powerhouse and has revolutionized the way that we encourage people to vote. She had a plan, she had a vision. She was not supported in that vision by people with money. She executed her vision anyway. And she in many ways she actually changed the outcome and the trajectory of that election. And I want to take a moment to recognize that. And and I told people in advance what we're not going to do and why I wanted to celebrate Stacey Abrams as a political organizer and as this visionary leader. um and and why I wanted to congratulate her and not necessarily the Democratic Party, with whom I'm still at odds. And and I said, what we're not going to do is take this time to, well, what about this and what about that and what about all these other people? And you're just erasing them. This isn't an erasure of them. If you want to talk about them, I have 11 other posts on my social media where I'm actually addressing them directly. But right now, on this post, in this moment, it is about Stacey Abrams and no one else. And if that's not for you, this is what you do on your phone. Or clicking away is what you do on your computer screen. I don't know what device you're using. And scroll. But that's not the discussion that we're going to have right now. What do people do? Disrespect my rules. What did I do? Delete their comments. What did they do? Start talking about identity. And it's oh, you are you're silencing black women. Here's what we're not going to do. We're not this is your male privilege. I didn't know that we were doing this. And I'm actually, if you want to talk about some type of privilege, it is the privilege to actually read, because you did not read what I said we were going to do. And now you experience the consequences of doing what I said that we're not going to do. And now you want to talk about my male privilege because you can't follow the rules in my house. And so, now you're mad and then like, and you have all of this, and here's all of your trauma, and but like you want to make this a conversation about privilege, and this isn't actually about that, and you're actually stacking identities right now. And that's what people do, I feel like, when they talk about privilege. They start to stack up these identities. Like, you know what? I'm disabled, I'm ugly, and I have, like, which that's actually a thing. Like,
I know. I've been hearing about pretty privilege a lot lately.
Pretty privilege. Like,
pretty privilege.
Like, this is, like, I have 3 heads, and just there's a lot of, like, there's a lot of the stacking.
You don't know the tri-headed struggle. you don't understand my experience.
And it's like, I shouldn't make fun of that, but this is like, and that's like, you're actually like, what you're doing is you're using this as a cudgel instead of actually understanding, like, how are you being systemically silenced or oppressed right now? Because if you actually understand, like, digital communication, and like, and ownership, like, silencing is when Black and brown voices and Black and brown female voices of color, like, like who are marginalized, that is silencing from platforms. Shadow banning is silencing, like, like actually, like, like orchestrating the mechanisms to actually, like, deprioritize the content that you put up and overrepresent the content from, like, middle class white people, that, like, or over prioritize advertising. That's silencing. And here you are having this conversation with me about, like, oh, you're using male privilege right now. I'm like, no, you need to understand you have to shut the up privilege, because this is not what we're going to do. And I stand in this. And so I know this person has probably, like, because they deleted and blocked me and they did all that, I know this person is probably joining a fan club of people right now that are talking about how, like, Sebastian is a rampaging misogynist and all I do is hate women. And you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Do it big.
Yeah.
I say, like, get out there. Live your best life.
I can't wait to get tagged in something that's like, he's problematic, you shouldn't have had him on your show. It's like every single person. Every single person you could possibly work with. I have not heard that, by the way. It's only been people very excited. But it's just like, yeah, I was so relieved to read your post about privilege, because I've just had such a problem with the discourse around it for so long. And I can say, just in my own little white life, that, I'm of a marginalized gender. So I have men in my life who are trying to be good people. And it's just like the way that we talk about things like male privilege and stuff, it's like, I've noticed there's been so many times when men just don't treat me like a person, because they're engaging with, like, they're like trying not to be privileged or trying not to act out of privilege. And it's like, we're losing that we're just two people having a conversation, like it's something to be aware of. Like, if I'm talking about my experience as a marginalized gender, then you can be like, oh, maybe I don't know what that's like, and I should listen, and maybe I should think before I talk, like that kind of thing, or whatever. But it's not like, you shouldn't be, I don't know, it's just so weird. It's like we stop being people to each other. And that's one of the ways that I was canceled somewhat recently. I was on the previous show, but we had this YouTuber on who I really like, and I'm like kind of friends with, to talk about, like, dismantling whiteness. And Callie and I participated in the conversation, and then we got called out on social media because we were, like, talking over the guest, and, like, we shouldn't have been talking at all during that topic. And I was like, but I'm invested in the project of dismantling whiteness, so I feel that it's important to model, like, actively participating in that, and not sitting back and just being like, oh, you're here to educate me, and I'm just here to, like, just not say anything and just listen. I don't think that that's, like, a good or fair model, and that's not, like, what she wanted to come on to do. And that was the hard part too, is, like, I knew my guest, we talked about what she wanted to do, and she also I could tell during the conversation, she kept pulling back, and I could tell she was trying not to talk a lot. And I, as like a host, I was like, okay, let me facilitate, like, let me step in and kind of like guide the conversation and facilitate. And I kept trying to invite her back in, but it was just this interesting dynamic. So I ended up like getting really scared. I was like, oh no, did I really do this? And I felt bad about it. And so I reached out to her, and she was like, I had a great time. Like, I don't really know what you're talking about. And also I could tell that I kind of like hurt the relationship a little bit, because I'm like, oh, I'm engaging with you now out of my privilege instead of engaging with you like as a person and as a fellow creator, which is how we had been engaging before. You know what I mean? So anyway, it's just really hard, because it's like, yeah, privilege, understanding privilege as the tool that it was created to be is very helpful, but it shouldn't be a way, like you shouldn't have to walk around and feel bad, you know, about it. Like, feel like you're a piece of shit because you have this kind of privilege. Like, especially if you're just actively engaged in trying to dismantle it and doing your best, then like, yeah, it's just to understand there's some experiences you don't have and you may not understand, and other people do. So listen to them. That's it. It shouldn't be anything more than that. That's it.
This should have been way more useful, like privilege, but that's not.
Right.
That's not what we decided to do with that. And I'm like really disappointed at the road that we decided to travel down.
I know, because it really is at its core a useful concept, but like everything else, I just have this theory that neoliberalism has invaded every single space and avenue in life, because everything's co-opted, everything's distorted, none of our tactics, like, I feel like nothing has been left untouched, you know?
It hasn't. And you're absolutely right. Neoliberalism has like it has invaded and corrupted like virtually every aspect of our daily lives, and like, you know, and it is inescapable in every fashion. So like, I don't know, like is there anything that we hadn't like covered in the episode that like that we've left out? Are there questions from people? Because like, I find it like really difficult to toggle back and forth between this discussion and the comments, and like, I don't know what people are saying. They probably have like all gone to my mentions, and like, you know, and like, I'm experiencing a mass cancellation right now that I won't even remember or know about until tomorrow morning when I wake up.
Well, so far I've been keeping my eye on the comments, and I haven't really seen any questions come in, but y'all, there's a bit of a delay. So if any of you have any questions, we're probably going to wrap up somewhat soon. So ask them now.
What were we talking about before we even got on? Because we were having a really good petty discussion before we even started.
Oh, well, you were telling me. You were telling me about your like stalker and just all the grief you've been getting online.
God, that's right. Yeah. Oh, she was so much fun. She's actually been quiet lately. I wonder if she'll come back again. Like, the thing is, this woman, like, she creates a different profile, and she keeps the same name, especially because she wants me to know who she is. Yeah. And so it's like, first of all, like, Mariah Carey gift. Why are you so obsessed with me? But like, this is like, it's such a weird thing, because like, she seems to like, she fixates on like, periodically, like, you know, one of her bugaboos is that she fixates on the fact that I have a Patreon. And I'm like, you know, and as I was saying before, we like, you know, when we were having the pre-party before we had the party, and now the after party, like, in the pre-party, I was like this is the like worst possible grift period ever. If I'm grifting people off of Patreon, because the actual expenses that like I incur by like, you know, by doing this work are like far greater than the financial benefit that I get. And if I actually worked more at my day job, I would be earning a lot more money. So I am a piss poor grifter, comparatively speaking, with other people. So like, you know, like, and the other thing, like, I remember we were also talking about like influencers and influencer culture, and
Oh,
like,
yes.
how personally, I'm flattered if people do consider me an influencer. That is certainly not a lane that I want to be in. What I actually love and what I actually enjoy is is media theory and
Mm-hmm.
pop culture. And and
Me
for
too.
me, actually using using these things as a platform to discuss animal liberation and Black liberation, um, is it's a way for me to decompress. And
Mm-hmm.
and if people are along for the ride on that, and and they want to throw some coins in the tip jar, I'm happy for that. But influencer culture is based on quantity over quality, and most influencers are just putting up post after post after post, and I don't have that in me. You're lucky to see me post once every week or every couple of weeks. And that's because when I don't post unless I have something to say, which hurts me in in the social media universe. If I was actually trying to build a following, and if I actually cared about about being an influencer, I would probably I've got one or two avenues for this. And showing my body isn't really working out. So I would have to just mass post, and I'm not doing that. So and the actual intellectual and emotional labor that I put into the content that I make, that goes into a presentation once a month that that may get
Mm-hmm.
parsed out over over a couple of weeks. And so yeah, not that I think that I'm a great theorist or academician, because I'm not. I'm a guy who who really just happens to love these things and these topics, and has found a way to talk about them that relates to a lot of people. And even that actually again comes from Black feminist thought. One of the things that Bell Hooks had written about decades ago is how pop culture is actually a lens through which people are able to relate to topics that are probably very intense and very
Mm-hmm.
difficult to deal with. So if we can actually take a piece of 80s nostalgia like Fraggle Rock and expend and and spend a couple of brain cells actually talking about how this is the show is a precursor to people understanding complex ecological theory, and
Mm-hmm.
and as a gateway drug, if you will, for eco psychoanalysis, and and sentient persons who thrive on plant-based eating. Let's do that. If we can if we can take popular TV shows and and films, and and talk about how certain episodes are reflected in our veganism, or have a vegan analysis of these things, or or literature. There's such a huge body of literature out there that remains untouched. That's that's exciting to me. There's a frustrated English teacher in me somewhere that is dying to get out, and
Mm.
and this is my expression of that. And maybe it would be nice to to actually go to beaches, and 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 take off my shirt, and and give them the guns and all that. But I don't have the guns, and actually don't like the beach that much. So this is that's out the window. And I'm probably not gonna set up a table or get a microphone and go out into the world and accost people on the street who are just trying to get a Starbucks, and just be why are you not vegan? And and then film myself doing it while some scared pedestrian is just staring at me like a deer in headlights, and they're like, what speciesism? What are you talking about? These are not my avenues for of course it's very entertaining. I don't take that away from anybody, but that's not my life, and that's not my social media, and it probably won't be in the foreseeable future. So that's I'm if I'm an influencer, my argument would be that I'm a piss poor influencer, and so therefore
Yeah.
you probably want to look elsewhere for that. Um, so that's that's my thoughts on it. And and yeah, if this is if this is grifting, I'm probably making a grand total of I would say, in a rough estimation, 650 an hour, net,
Mm-hmm.
after all is said and done. And I'm only probably getting paid for approximately 8 to 10 hours of of the work that I put into the things that I put online. because the last thing that I want, like, you know, is to ever be wrong about something, which of course, like, I'm still gonna be, but like the damage that's done to your credibility in the media universe if you, like, you know, if you don't thoroughly research things and actually back it up with sound theory is like immeasurable, and I don't want that to happen, and I would hate to feel responsible for having misled people or acted in a way that has done them a material harm because I, like, you know, I had betrayed their trust in that way. And so, like, yeah, like it, like I want to get it right. And like, you know, and that means like less posting and like, you know, and not posting like pretty pictures, and like I can't do food photography, so you're not going to see like a whole bunch of like, I'll never be one of those like snazzy Instagrammers whom I love, by the way, who has these like fantastic videos of them like making incredible dishes. What I got in the kitchen right now is cereal, and that's gonna like happen for the rest of the week.
Yep.
So
Yeah, Mexi and Catherine and I were all chatting yesterday about just social media in general and how the way that you are supposed to game social media, it like almost guarantees that you're gonna fuck up somewhere, right? Because if you're supposed to be posting like hot takes every single day, all the time, it's like, of course, at some point you're gonna fuck up. Like you're just going to. And it's been interesting because when the old show ended, before this one started, I had a long break and I just I was posting on social media every single day and I got super burnt out on it. So I took a break. And yeah, when I came back, ooh, that algorithm does not like me. Instagram is like, have fun, bitch. No one's ever going to see your posts again. Like, it's been so hard. And I'm like, I don't want to go back to posting every day. I just don't. So I'm like, I guess I'm just in purgatory forever where my posts are just not going to be seen by anyone. But anyway, we did have a couple questions. So Cecil asked, any plans for a book?
I keep wanting to say yes to that, and I keep starting books and not finishing them. The trouble
It's
is
relatable.
like finding the time and the motivation to actually complete a book is really difficult. You're not the only person who has been on me about that. Like part of it is actually like, you know what? Part of it is actually, I don't mind saying this. I'm not that original a thinker. Like I think that I have a fantastic, wonderful, great idea, and then I actually start going down that like that road, and I'll get like 3 weeks
Yeah.
into research, and I'm like, oh, I was writing about this like a decade ago. Like the stuff that I actually see being put out by people who actually think about like vegan theory and like, you know, and like, you know, and vegan analyses is so incredible. There is a fantastic book that's actually coming out, hopefully very soon, from Oxford. It's written by Amelia Quinn, and she actually. I'm so disappointed and so proud at the same time. Like after I had read Carol Adams' analysis of like, you know, of Frankenstein's monster in The Sexual Politics of Meat, you know, which was another thing that had inspired me. 2 years ago, I actually thought about like, you know, like number one, I thought about actually having Carol as a guest, and I finally succeeded in doing that last year on Halloween. And that was amazing. So she did a presentation about her monster. But I also asked Carol if I could use that as a springboard for actually looking at like, you know, at vegan monsters, or like looking at like, you know, like the marriage of like the horror genre, which is my favorite genre of film. And like, you know, and taking a vegan analysis of that and a vegan analysis of, or like an animal analysis of like, you know, monster culture in general. As it turns out, you know, that was the like, you know, the like PhD thesis of Amelia at Oxford University, and she turned that into a book that hasn't been released yet. And I asked her if
Oh
I could, like,
shit.
you know, if I could read it, and like, you know, and she said yes, and so it's very private. I can't share it with any of you. But like the great thing about this is that this knowledge is out there now, and I'm like, this is so much more incredible than what I was thinking. But now I have to go back and think of something else because she literally beat me by a year.
Yeah. That's hard.
But it's also great. It's also great because like I actually have like, you know, thought about like a different type of analysis that I can do, and now I have someone else's work to cite on top of that. And that's the great thing about about living in an academic world. You go down these wormholes or rabbit holes of knowledge, of information, and like you get inspiration from other people. So do I have a book? No. I can't say that I have one, but do I have chapters in other people's books? Absolutely. I've written 3 chapters now that are gonna like be published in other people's like academic works, and and I'm really grateful that like, because I don't have the attention span and the time and the knowledge to actually create a complete book myself, I can contribute to other academic anthologies and see my work represented in there. You know what? That's manageable for me. Chapters are manageable for me. Maybe I'll have the time in the future to write a whole book. God knows the pandemic has given me more free time than than I know what to do with. But then that got eaten up by the anxiety again. So
I feel that. Well, Stacy said, would love for you to turn your media presentations into a book. I was thinking that too. I would definitely purchase like a collection of essays from you of just revamped stuff you've blogged about. So you have some options.
I didn't know you were here, Stacy. I actually she flashed up on the screen just now when you were asking me that. I this is I had alluded to this on my Patreon, but I don't want to overwhelm people by putting up like 16 posts in a row. So I was just gonna start filling this out over the next coming weeks. I wasn't planning on doing a book, at least not immediately. But what I wanted to do was actually take these presentations that I had done over the past year, rework them, and actually come up with a curriculum for people to actually take classes on this, for free or low cost. And I say for free or low cost because having access to knowledge is really important to me, irrespective of your financial standing. If you've got a mobile phone and access to an internet connection, let's just do this. And so I wanted to come up with a 10 or 12-week course and focus on different modules about film, literature, TV, and social media. A 10 or 12-week course. Of 12 weeks, then we have 3 weeks on each module. Not really assign homework, but in between watch movies or maybe read an essay or two, and then contribute to a roundtable discussion rather than me doing a presentation for you. I want people to actually my biggest thing is I want people to learn to think critically for themselves and change their relationships with other animals. And so drawing in people who would be on the back foot about veganism, or who are suspicious of veganism, but are open to pop culture, actually having a vegan reading or a vegan understanding of this is it helps to revolutionize these ideas in their own minds. And so when I think of a book, perhaps later on, but I actually want to, that is my goal for this year. Last year, I wanted to create a campaign of mutual aid, through these presentations, to have fun for the people who are part of my own personal community, and to show people that our goals are are adjacent to one another. If we actually donate plant-based food to people in Palestine, if we actually give relief to wild animals and indigenous people who are suffering as a result of wildfires in different areas, that to me is meaningful mutual aid that actually shows what our community of people are about, and we get to have fun. The difficult part about creating this curriculum and doing these classes in a 12-week period is that it is enormously labor intensive, and I've tried to get funding for it, but no one actually wants to fund it. I rely on the people who are actually already part of this community, because when I reach out to donors or people who fund the efforts of influencers or other organizations, I can't make the kinds of promises that other people do. I'm never going to tell people, oh, you know what, this is going to make X number of people vegan, because data driven, that's me. I can't make that promise, and that's not an outcome that I think is that we should expect. But other people do. If we're standing in a cube and we have X number of conversations with people, that many people is now vegan. And so this is a demonstrable outcome. And so these are the results. And so we've made hundreds of thousands of people vegan. Or so many people watch this video on YouTube of this person giving a speech that said go vegan. So now those people are vegan. And so that's sexy. That's something that people want to give money to. This isn't sexy because I don't make that promise. And I'm not going to say that outcome is going to happen, but I can say that what we do know is that the more people actually know, like the more we exercise our critical thinking, the more we're actually able to make these connections. The less susceptible we are to conspiratorial thinking, the less susceptible we are to bigotry, and the more open we are. The veganism will come if people like, are made comfortable and safe to like actually understand these things and come to their own conclusions. I'm very confident of that. Is it going to be like week 12, you've got your certification, and now you walk out the door and you buy like a block of Chow cheese or BioLife? That is debatable. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. Are people more
Right.
inclined to actually not rag on vegans who are part of their, like, their organizations for, like, for hunger, for like, for like unhoused people? Like, are people going to be more likely to make concessions to that because they understand that we live in a world with other animals who deserve our consideration and who are parts of marginalized communities themselves? You fucking better believe it, because that is absolutely that's foundational to what we're teaching. But like, like, listen, if we're not saying like vegan, and like, and making that like, and passing out pamphlets like that, then it's not something that people want to get involved in. So that's more difficult. So like, like here again, like I want to engage in more of that labor, because I want to do this and this is important to me, but I also have to pay the bills. And so things happen much more slowly for me than they do for like, for the other people who do, like, like, again, like we live in that black and white world. And like, and people are like, the black and white outcome is like, are you going to say that these people are now vegan? No, I'm not. That would be a lie. And I hate it when people lie. And like, and people are lying to you and you're accepting it because it's what you want to hear. But that would be irresponsible and immoral of me. And so therefore I don't want to do that. And so they take their check in their pocketbook and they put it away and they say, oh, well, then, that's very kind. Have there been organizations that have not done that? Absolutely. Like Culture and Animals Foundation, they absolutely value artistic expression and like academic work, and they've supported me. And Animal Charity Evaluators has like, has twice gifted me with like support, financial support, real hardcore financial support. And so like, whereas like, people like they have their detractors and like there's valid criticisms of Animal Charity Evaluators, of ACE, like, like that's like, I would be wrong to say that like, ACE doesn't actually like, they give when it's necessary. And like I've had some like really meaningful support from people who are in ACE and who have always had my back. But like, that hasn't been my experience universally. So that's that.
Well, I feel that. I was a corporate trainer by trade. So I've put together a lot of educational things, and it is a lot. I love it. I really love it. And I also have ideas about stuff that I could create, and then just have it be maybe donation only. Like if you can afford, send me a few bucks. If you can't, then here it is. But yeah, it's hard to, it's just really labor intensive, and it's hard to do that without some kind of, I mean, I already don't really get paid for, this too much. And it's, anyway, I'm going to have to start like getting back into corporate contracts and stuff. So it's like, I don't think I can really get to it, but it sucks. I wish we lived in a world where it's like, yeah, if you have this knowledge and it would be helpful, then you just have mechanisms to get that knowledge out to people. Can you imagine? So Koch Potato asked, Sebastian, are you watching any good trash TV shows at the moment? What a fun question.
First of all, the spelling of that name is incredible.
Isn't it?
Like, that was the greatest name ever. I am watching trash TV. Okay, the way that I watch TV is probably like non-traditional. Actually, it's probably very traditional in the pandemic age. I wait until shows are completely over and then I binge them.
That's
because
great.
Like immediate gratification, and like I can't wait week to week or season to season. When I'm forced to do that, I always hate it. And I will abandon shows that I actually loved because like, you know what, I completely forgot what happened in the last season and now I'm not invested in the next one. But I watched Sabrina, which was awful, and I loved it. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix.
I still haven't watched it yet, but I've heard so many things.
Oh yeah, like it's bad and wonderful all at the same time. I am watching Schitt's Creek right now. There are six seasons
Mm-hmm.
of it, I believe, and I am on the 10th episode of season 4, and I love it. Like David and Patrick, favorite characters. Alexis, my favorite
Of
person
course.
ever. And I think that's it. I don't like those are the two shows that I am watching right now. And I'm very like I don't watch a lot of TV. Like I turn on my TV for like, I don't have cable. Like so it's just my Apple TV. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
streaming I've got HBO Max, um, courtesy of another one of my friends who's paying for it. I have Netflix that I pay for, and I share with everybody else. And like Hulu, which again, like you know what, you mix and match, don't you? This is the world that we live
Yes.
in. Look, I give you my Amazon Prime, you give me your Hulu, and this is what we do today, right? Oh, okay, so like that's the world. But so like like at the end of the day, I'll probably turn on my TV and either watch a trash scary movie, um, or like or I'll binge a couple of episodes of like of these shows over the weekend and then like and bang it out. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
extent of my TV watching. Most of my time I actually spend working and doing podcasts, and it's and listening to podcasts, not like physically doing them myself.
Mm-hmm.
But and those two things are actually quite relaxing to me. Like like if people ask me what I'm doing, like like technical writing and copy editing is my day job, and that's actually because I have this weird like ability to be able to like parse the English language like that, and it's quite soothing to do that. And then like when I'm through doing that, I'm probably spending like 3 or 4 hours of like going down these rabbit holes of information about
Mm-hmm.
like about the histories of television shows or particular episodes or camera angles, and like and doing like analyses of those so that we can do these presentations later on. And that's relaxing because like I just like I like learning, and so I have this warehouse of useless information that like that is about pop culture and veganism. And since like actually like being able to memorize all of the scripts of every episodes of Gilmore Girls doesn't benefit animal liberation, like this is the thing that I do instead. So now like that's what you all are subjected to each week or every couple of weeks.
I love it. I was wondering about that. Are your presentations that you have done, are they available anywhere, or is it just like the live event and that's it? Because when I was scrolling through your Instagram, I was like, oh shit, this is some really cool stuff. I would love to hear this, but I missed it.
Some of them, like not all of them, are available on my Patreon. Like I've
Mm-hmm.
created what do you call it account? Like you can find my presentations online. If you scroll through my Patreon, you can like you can see some of those presentations. Not all of them, however, because I make no
Okay.
bones of telling people that like like this is experimental. This is going to be a dialogue
Mm-hmm.
because like I'm still forming these ideas, and so I haven't written an actual essay about this at this time. But like you all have consented to being the experimental animals and participating in these conversations, and so you're getting this before everyone else. And then later, like I like reform it, turn it into a proper presentation. Um, and in the perfect world, I would be able to do video essays and like have a YouTube channel where people can do this on their own and not be hostaged by me, like, doing this like on my time. And free
Mm-hmm.
people up to make their own observations and like, and take their own searches in a different direction. So yeah, some of them are online. Others like I'm like, well, this is crap and this is still not ready yet. And I'm probably going to do this presentation 3 more times before I feel like it's ready to release to the wider world. And so
Mm-hmm.
like we go that way. Oh, by
Cool.
the way,
Well,
like
good to
everything is
know.
available to my patrons and the public.
Mm-hmm.
Like I made a decision like, maybe 3 months ago that like I don't feel comfortable with like putting my stuff behind a paywall.
Mm-hmm.
Like my patrons are there, they'll give it, they'll throw money in the tip jar, but like this like, anything that I produce is still going to be available to the public. So most of my posts are public on my Patreon. So anybody can find them.
Great. Yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording, and I had come to the same decision I think last year, that I was like, because I always struggled with the Patreon tiers. I could never seem to deliver on anything that was promised. And I just, I was like, I don't want to keep, like, if I spend the time to create something, and I don't want people to not have access to something because they don't have money. So I'm like, you know what? It's all free. If you want, please tip me. Please give me money. But yeah, it's all out there. Yeah, it sucks because we're both like, we put a lot of work into our stuff. So it's like, yeah, I don't want to sweat over this for 3 weeks and then be like, oh, these, this handful of people can see it, no one else. Narcissism.
It's exactly the kind. Yeah, I know. It's exactly the kind of elitism that I wanted to avoid. And I'm like, well, great. Now am I reproducing this in my own work? How do I not do that? So
I know.
Right, this is.
It's so hard though, because it's like, I always want people to make a living too, so it's like, I definitely don't judge if people do have a paywall. Like, I definitely get it, but I never felt comfortable with it. I just could never set up anything where it felt okay. So I was like, just get rid of it and see what happens. Well, how are you feeling, friend? I've kept you
good. No, I'm just like, I'm scrolling through. I've got, like, I'm just reading people now.
Oh, someone asked earlier, and I am curious. I can give you a second to catch up, but someone asked about the Unnatural Vegans recent video. Have you seen it, heard about it? I actually haven't seen it yet.
No, like, I haven't seen the video, but like...
Can I say before you answer, she's the only person I ever did a response to, like, years ago, but she's the only person I ever did, like, response media to, because I was like, girl, what are you saying?
She's way out there. Like, first of all, I forgot that, like, Unnatural Vegan, not that I'm somebody, but, like, I forgot that she existed until, like, people started, like... started talking about her again. And I'm like, oh, she's still doing this thing. And, like, I haven't watched her videos, but, like, the more she comments and the more she puts out there, the worse she looks. And I'm like, I think the funniest thing she said, and the God, I don't know what's wrong with her. She said... Somebody said something about, like, do you denounce white supremacy? And she said, I mean, in general, I don't like it, or I disapprove of it. And I was like, she wrote like a whole paragraph. I was like, well, you're qualified. You qualify your disdain for white supremacy when, in general, that makes it sound like mayonnaise. Like, generally speaking, I don't like it. But if there's like a smear of it on my sandwich, I'm okay. Why would you say that? Why would you do that? What's wrong with you? So I'm like,
I don't know.
So she is a whole mess. But like, that's look. So like, listen, if y'all cancel her, I wasn't here. So like, I'm not in it. Like, so if she get canceled, that is entirely on her. But like, so as long as we talk about people to cancel. But yeah, I thought that she is definitely something else. Like, go on ahead. You go be great. Unnatural Vegan. Be great.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to her too, because I swear when I first started watching her channel, she like had good takes and was normal, and then something happened, and I heard her husband or partner, whoever, is like, have you heard this as well?
No, I'm not. I'm just reading the people.
It's like,
yo, your people are so petty. I'm reading comments. They're too much.
They're amazing. Every time I'm like, no, I shouldn't, they're like, do it. Marine, aka Privileged Vegan, is here and says hi.
Hi, girl.
My baby girl.
Yo, like y'all are too much. How are your people this funny? How are your people this funny? Every time
they're so funny.
On Ben Shapiro. Yo,
right? I mean, it's not untrue.
Oh, I'm so happy to see so many people here that I love. Like Stacey's here, and of course, like you said, a privileged vegan. Like it's so like, oh, Cecil, go be petty and unnatural. Be natural. Like, oh, you people are so good. I love it. I love it. If I ever get to come back.
Oh, you can come back. I actually, if you're interested, I really want to have the conversation about dismantling whiteness, because I feel like I didn't love like the way it came out the first time, and that was like, it's gone now. So I don't know if that's a topic you're interested in doing a live stream about, but I was thinking it would be fun to revisit that.
Let's do it.
Or anything else you want to talk about. You can come back. We can just chill. We can just gossip about
I feel like
people.
this was almost therapeutic for me, because like I felt like I spent an hour and a half. Oh my God, almost 2 hours now. Just chilling.
I know. That's why I'm like, I can let you go.
Oh. No, we should wrap up. We should wrap up.
Yeah, we should wrap up. So, yeah, okay. We're gonna go, everyone. We love you all very much. It's so cute because there's such a delay that it's like once I hit end, then I see all their cute little comments come in. I'm like, no, don't go. I'm like, sorry. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming today. It was really fun. Thank you for coming today. It was really fun. And yeah, we'll just see you on the next one. You and I are going to be in the studio together when I end this.
I would love
just FYI. Yeah. But yeah,
I'm here for
bye
it.
everybody.
I'm here.